If you're building your ABA company and you're tired of guessing, this is for you. We built the BCBA blueprint to give you real structure, systems, and support without the fluff. Details are in the description.
Welcome, everyone. Nicole is going to be talking today about preventing burnout. And we've had a few people come on and talk about burnout and burnout prevention. Last year, I think it was, we had Eddie Amosquita, who actually was a behavior technician and left ABA altogether. And he shared with us why he got burnout and left the business altogether. So really good input to have really for you business owners that are out there to help prevent burnout with your team. And then for you guys that are out there, you also need to make sure that you're taking care of yourselves. You need to make sure that you're thinking, what do I need to make sure that I can take care of everybody else? That old example where the oxygen mask falls out of the airplane, falls out of the top of the airplane. Put yours on and then help the child next to you, help the person next to you who needs help with their meds. But if you run out of oxygen, you're not going to be able to help anybody else. Along those same lines, Nicole works with people in the behavior business and in the industry to help form some of that self-care. So with that, I'd like to introduce Nicole Stewart. Thank you for joining us, Nicole.
Hi, all. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you to Josh and Derek for having me here. This is worth a CEU. So what we're going to be doing is there is going to be 3 keywords throughout the training. And then at the end, I'm going to put a CEU form in the chat for you to fill out. And then I will get you a certificate, which is exciting. A nice free CEU to get through the middle of your week. All right, so we're going to get started. Normally, I talk a lot about myself at the beginning of a presentation because I like people to know who you're learning from. Today, I'm going to be really going through a lot about my journey and how I went from feeling burnt out and considering leaving the ABA field to presenting and feeling inspired by what I do, feeling lit up, feeling energized, whatever the word, empowered, whatever the opposite of burnout is. That's where I am. That's how I feel. And so it's really been a journey. I've worked with other people to help them through this journey, and it is possible in our field. And so I'm here to talk about it. Usually I would tell you all the things I'm doing and all about me, but you're going to learn all that today. Okay, so our learning objectives. Got to make sure that there is a clear purpose to what we're doing and make sure it relates back to ABA and behavior analytic in nature. So we're going to be talking about identifying and addressing the signs of burnout that are common among BCBAs. We're going to talk about some different practice areas that can help you regain your passion and reduce your burnout. And then we're going to talk about some strategies or entry points to starting your own practice or modifying your professional balance for a more fulfilling career. So really today is a lot of talking about how to understand and address our establishing operations and why we do what we do. I'm going to give you our first keyword, and that is going to be toaster, Toaster, toaster. Then I put a Pop-Tart in the toaster. All right. These are my beautiful children, 2018. I want to start here with my journey. I had just had my second son. We had just moved to New Jersey, and this is a picture that was taken after me and these beautiful boys and my mom, thank goodness for my mother, spent the day in the emergency room after my then husband, now ex-husband, and I spent the night chasing a bat out of our house. This is what happens. You move from the city to the suburbs, and apparently there are bats everywhere. I guess it's normal to have bats in your house. It turns out that bat bites are very small, and in old houses with doors that don't close properly, no one could guarantee that we hadn't been bitten. We all had to get rabies shots. It happened to be a day that I was already taking off work to continue to unpack our house because, like I said, we had just recently moved to New Jersey. I had personal meetings scheduled. I was just trying to catch up on the mail. I had to make baby appointments and other appointments and all of these other things. Maybe sleep, maybe sit for a minute, watch an episode of Friends, maybe take care of myself for 5 seconds. And instead, I spent the whole day in the ER, got 4 shots myself, got my kids a bunch of shots. And then I built this beautiful playhouse that it was a tough day for everyone and they really needed something to support them. And I'm sure you all know that when I got back to my clinical director job the next day after having this crazy day, all of my work was still waiting for me because we know that in this field, a day off doesn't mean that somebody else covers your shift or your work. It just means that you are going to do it some other time, right? And for me, I was rapidly running out of some other time in my schedule. And so this might not be your story. You might not have two kids. You might not have just moved to the suburbs. That's all okay. I'm not saying maybe this does resonate with you, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe you're overwhelmed in a different way. You're feeling burned out in a different way. My point here is that I was starting to see cracks in the armor here. Until this point, I had worked and lived within a 15-minute walk of my job and my home. Everything was convenient. It all made up for this questionable stress that I was experiencing at work. And then once things weren't so convenient, once I had other things on my plate, once something else was going on, it was no longer sustainable. I started to outgrow all of these systems and all of these processes, and I started to feel like it was all too much. And so then I started to look at my life to figure out what pieces were no longer working. And it just felt that every space in my life was so demanding. And my workplace, I was a clinical director at a small center in Manhattan, and it was incredibly demanding. I was working before we moved, I would drop my older son off at daycare at 8 in the morning and pick him up at 6 p.m. Like I was the first one there and the last one out, and I was working 10 hours a day. And sometimes on the weekends and sometimes later than that. So I was working at least 50 hours a week. So demanding in our field, right? And it's never finished. And now I'm adding my commute's not easy. If anybody else lives in New Jersey Transit is questionable at best. And then my role also, we know in our field, it requires us to take on so many other people's problems, whether it's your client, our clients are high need, our families are going through a lot, the staff that we're training are going through a lot. There's a lot going on for all these different people. And I just felt like I was at capacity. And so I started to see all these little places where the foundation was starting to crumble. I would love, as I'm starting to share this story, would love to hear if anybody feels comfortable sharing in the chat, spaces where you may have felt, you might be starting to feel that, where you're starting to feel like either burnt out for the staff training is hard or your RBT turnover. What is it for you that is the straw that's breaking the camel's back? And I can see the chat. I am going to change the layout because the cutout of me is really bothering me. That's better so I can see myself. The background was wigging me out. I can see some people typing in the chat, which is exciting for me. I am always on 7 to 7. There's not time to build and fix systems. There's only time to put out fires. This is not conducive or supportive for helpful therapy. Fighting the systems of insurance, wait lists, families who need help now and can't get it, lack of quality providers with consistency. These are so true because the paperwork is hard. The nature of our jobs is hard because we're all doing families who need help now and can't get it. It's emotionally exhausting to be constantly talking to families and hearing, oh, you can't get this and you can't get that and you can't do this. It's really, that they need help and there's too much red tape and you can't help them right now. And I find that to be really hard emotionally, in addition to just some of the stuff that's just hard. The hours are demanding, so physically it's tiring. Our jobs physically can be hard sometimes. Kristen said when you received your autism diagnosis along with your daughter as well, also as a BCBA with already crazy hours. So now you're dealing with understanding yourself and your daughter and trying to meet your needs while also supporting all of these clients and trying to do a job that already has crazy hours. So a lot of similar things I'm hearing that I've also said: RBT turnover, workload, quantity or quality. Want to be a BCBA, but expect it to be almost everything else. Oh my God. I love that. I feel like that should be my theme because that's how I felt. I don't even know if I like the field anymore because I was like, this isn't what I wanted to do. I just want to help families and children. I was like, this is all I want to do is help families. I did not want to be getting yelled at, or now I have to train a brand new staff member. Oh, another one quit. Now I have to train another staff member. Now I'm interviewing people for weeks. It's just such a hard thing. Elise said at the end of the day, the clients are numbers to big companies who are responsible for making profits. There has to be a better way. And I'm here to tell you the way that I'm doing it and help you hopefully carve your own path. Thank you all for sharing. I love it. I appreciate it. Some of this is very vulnerable stuff, and thank you all for sharing it. So, all of these things that we're talking about are symptoms of burnout. And so some of this language is taken from Maslow's burnout inventory, which I'm going to switch to in a minute. Like we said, our field is really rigorous. These are all different ways that we experience burnout, whether we feel drained, we feel cynical, we are out of patience, we might doubt ourselves, which is interesting. I think that it hasn't come up for us a lot yet, but that imposter syndrome or that feeling of I'm never doing enough, I think comes up a lot for BCBAs. And actually, there just was an article I read yesterday, so I didn't have time to incorporate it into this, about why BCBAs are so burnt out, which is really cool. I'll try to share it if I can find it. Yeah, how can we forget imposter syndrome? So true, Katie. It's just, these are all these ways that are feeling and experiencing burnout. So I am going to stop sharing for a moment, and then I'm going to switch my screen if I understand how to do that. I gotta say, something that I like about Teams is that it gives me a little thing that I can it'll just say share this window, and then I can share it. And now this bar is in my way, so give me 1 second. Can everybody see Adobe? And then
Yep, we can see it.
This bar is really driving me nuts over here. Okay, I've moved it out of the way. So this, and you can see Maslow's burnout inventory, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. So this is Maslow's burnout inventory, which is the most commonly used tool, it says it itself, to self-assess if you're at risk of burnout. I took a lot of the words I use in that visual from here, but this gives you an idea of, there's 3 different sections talking about how you're feeling emotionally. The section B is starting to feel disconnected from your work. And then section C is actually, you flip it on its side, or flip it on its head, which is how your sense of accomplishment. So in sections A and B, when you're looking at this, if you're saying, I feel emotionally drained by my work, and you're saying every day, working with people all day long requires a great deal of effort every single day, you're keeping track of this. C is going to be the opposite, where ideally you want to be saying, like, I accomplish many worthwhile things in this job. You want to be saying every day, but if you're feeling burnt out, you're likely going to be saying, like, never, maybe a few times a year, maybe once a month. And this can give you a really good sense. We're behavior analysts. We like our data. We like our numbers. You could even track this. You could say, I'm starting to feel burnt out. I'm going to do this survey for myself once a month. And for me, leaving my clinical director's job was a tipping point where I was like, now I'm at a point where this job is no longer working for me. Basically, the bad outweighed the good, in my opinion, in many different ways, and not necessarily related to the actual job, but for many reasons. And had I had this as quantifiable data, I could have been like, once this gets to a certain number, once I get to moderate burnout in 2 areas, I'm going to consider leaving my job. Or once it gets to high level burnout in 1 area, I'm going to consider leaving my job. It gives you that scope, because I think oftentimes in our field, at least from what I've experienced, and feel free to chime in, that feeling of burnout, that feeling of depersonalization, and the lack of personal achievement can often be underscored by supervisors, by other professionals, where you start to feel depersonalized, and everyone will be like, oh, I have a hard day sometimes too. And you're like, but I'm having lots of hard days. I'm feeling burnt out most days. And so this gives you that space to, like, objectively look at it and be like, yes, it's normal to feel burnt out once a month or a few times a month, but I'm actually feeling it a few times a week or every single day. And that's a problem. And now it's really an issue. And so it quantifies it, which I think for us really helps it. I am going to put this file in the chat so that you guys all have it. I don't know how to do that.
We'll also post it in the link.
Okay.
on the because we have those files. We'll post a download
Okay,
link to those
perfect.
files in the comments.
Perfect. I'm like, I don't know how to do it. Apparently,
Yep.
I do not, ABA joke, guys, I do not generalize Zoom to Teams. I'm like really struggling here. Who knew? Yeah, I'd like to be able to include them. I just am not able to add it to the chat.
Yep, you can just email Josh if and he'll make sure you
Perfect.
get the link.
Perfect. Okay. Okay. So let's get back to here. Show. Okay, perfect. So when we're looking at this, we see that the antidote for we have all of our symptoms of burnout. You're looking at this Maslach's burnout inventory. Maybe you're like, gosh, I am more burned out than I think. When we look at burnout, we're thinking that the antidote for is self-care, right? And it is. But the problem is that our society has built a whole business on the self-care industry, and we think of it as taking a mental health day or a bubble bath or having a glass of wine or your job giving everybody $5 Starbucks gift cards as a thank you for hard work. But if you're truly burnt out, if you're at that high level burnout across the board on Maslach's inventory, those are band-aids on bullet holes. It'll work for a second. It's not going to be effective. It's not going to be sustainable. You can't take a mental health day every time you feel burnt out, because you're going to feel burnt out. If you're scoring that you feel burnt out every single day, how are you taking a mental health day every single day? You need more than a mental health day every day. You need more than a bubble bath every day. It's also not a sustainable way to live, right? That feels like really backwards. So what you actually want to be doing is taking a good look at things, your life, and come up with a new plan and take a different path than maybe you were expecting to take. I work in private practice, and you guys are all presumably in the ABA Businesses Challenge Facebook group. So my guess is that you're either thinking about starting a practice or you've started your own business. And I feel that in order to be able to do that in a way that prioritizes yourself, you need to align your work with your values. And in order to be able to do that, you first need to deepen self-awareness, and you really need to understand your career aspirations. And then we're not going to talk so much today about the needs of the benefit and community or support and resources for success, because I actually do cover those topics. I could talk for hours, and I have talked for hours. We just don't have enough time to cover all of this enough in depth for it to be meaningful. And so those are things that I cover in my ABA Business Inspiration Masterclass, which I'll put all of my links in the chat at the end. But that will all be covered there to understand what the needs of your benefit and community are. And then we'll go through that. I'll go through what the whole class is at the end. So today we're going to really be focusing on deepen self-awareness and your career aspirations. Before we get into that, the second keyword is beach, BEACH, beach. I built a sandcastle on the beach. There we go. Back to my life. I picked pictures where you can't see my kids' faces. Let's start talking about deepen self-awareness. Like I said, as we're talking about these things, I'm sharing about my life. I'm sharing about my journey. So now we're fast forward to 2020. And I was in this place where I was on this road to self-discovery, learning about myself. I was in an unhealthy marriage. I was in an unhealthy workplace. And I am an incredibly determined person. I'm an incredibly goal-oriented person. And I feel like coming out of all of these spaces where I had worked really hard and not necessarily felt that was being reciprocated, I was like really determined to understand myself and learn how to do better for myself, and also for these two tiny humans that I'm raising, who now it's 2020, and my kids are playing house in this cute little house that is now in the outside. It's still outside. It's a little worse for wear. I think it got ruined in a hurricane or something. But here we are in 2020. My ex-husband and I had separated, and apologies. And sorry, I lost my train of thought a little bit. And we're going through a global pandemic, and I am starting to see that these two little humans are going through just as much as I'm going through. And I need to put on my own oxygen mask first, and I need to figure out my stuff so that I can best support them. I'm here because I felt I did a lot of this on my own. And so over the years, I have taken the processes that I use because I'm very much like a self-starter and I learn a lot on my own, but not everybody has the same learning style that I have. But that doesn't mean that you can't go through a similar journey, that you can't understand yourself in your own way. And so I've started to create these tools that help people go through this maybe a little faster, or maybe you feel a little less on your own because somebody else has done it before, or somebody you've experienced this and felt that it's just not. I genuinely, obviously, I had my close friends, and like I mentioned, I had my mom, but it wasn't a lot of what I did was really hard work on my own. And so I've tried to create these tools just to make it a little easier. So this is not a picture of child labor. It's also not a picture of 20 million random ways I entertained my children. It's actually a picture of us turning my garage into a learning pod space for my older son and 4 of his friends. And while my job was all remote, all of these inconveniences still kept adding up, right? So we've talked about all these things that are really hard. I was now the person handling all the angry parents, and a lot of parents were angrier, and a lot of people were more stressed out. So I was getting a lot more angry at me, a lot more anger directed at me. I was also missing a lot of meetings because the way my schedule was set up was that I had to be with my kids a lot during the day. And so I was still working 50 to 60 hours a week, but my schedule, it's like I was in a different time zone where I was doing my work at completely different hours. And so my supervisors were just saying things like, oh, we had to meet and we had to make this clinical decision without you. And it's, but I'm the clinical director. What do you mean you made a clinical decision without me? What? And so it wasn't these things. That burnout scale kept going up. And so I'm starting to think about, what do I enjoy about my job? Do I even want to be doing this job? And quite honestly, like I was like, I'm not getting paid. We don't get paid that much in our field. I'm not getting paid enough to be bending over backwards, be sacrificing my kids' mental health, be sacrificing my own mental health. What am I doing wrong? What can I be doing differently here? And so I started to take stock of my own history, my own strengths, what I enjoy, what I don't enjoy, and what my professional goals are, so that I could really understand myself and plan this really intentionally. Because I know I've stumbled into a lot of great things in my life, but I also know that I was at an inflection point where I didn't have the time to just stumble into something. For instance, I worked at the New England Center for Children. I did an internship there. And then I worked there after college, and then I was like, "Oh, hey, they have this master's they have 2 master's programs, right?" They had a partnership for an ABA program and a partnership for a master's in teaching program. And the ABA program required the GRE, and I'm really a really bad test taker and have a lot of test anxiety, and the master's in teaching didn't, and I was like, "Oh, I'll go do that one. Great. I'll go do the one that I don't need the GRE for." And I didn't really think it through. I was just like, let me think about what my priority is right here. And the priority is avoiding taking a test. I always wanted to be a teacher. That sounds great. And I didn't really think it through. And it worked out great because I love the fact that I have a background in teaching as well as in ABA, because I think it makes my experience really applicable to where I am now and has made me part of who I am. But at this point in my life, I felt like I really wanted to be intentional in what my next steps were. Oh, how did I skip to thank you? I'm so sorry, guys. All the way at the end. Spoiler, sorry, you're seeing everything. So I just want to make sure you guys are with me. Perfect. This is my planning wheel, which again, I have a copy of this for everybody as well. Apologies, it's not perfectly set up. I'm not that great. Like I said, I'm not that great with the graphics. And so this is something that I have for all of you to start thinking about your background, your experience, what you're looking for as well. And so just to go through a few highlights for me, all these different categories. So energizing activities. So I sat down and I really thought, what do I like to do about my job? If there are things that I have that sense of personal achievement, what are they most likely to be? And I identified that I really like working and training others. I don't know how many people are familiar with the impartial hearing process if you work with the departments of education, but I love participating in impartial hearings. I also really love providing parent education, teaching them what their rights are. helping parents understand their kids better, being their kids' advocate in a space, telling the parents, this is what your kid is able to do. Parenting doesn't come with a manual. No kid comes with a manual, but if people can have somebody who's coaching them, I feel like it makes such a big difference. And then also identifying these small changes that lead to bigger outcomes. And those were the things where I had a family in 2020 where the child was engaging in problem behavior to gain attention. And I filmed a video of my sons where I had one of them as a model. And then I showed it and I was like, use your older son as a model to show how to gain attention. And she did that once, and their younger child's inappropriate behavior to gain attention was like just dropped drastically, where it's like this small little pivot made a huge difference in their lives. And I was like, I love those type of things where like it feels easy to us, but of course it's not natural to a parent, because why would they be expected to know like, oh, if I just teach them to tap me on the shoulder or tap my leg, and if I have my other kid model it, like those are all ABA principles. Other people don't know how to do that stuff. And I find providing those little things to be really valuable. That's one big space we're looking at what my energizing activities are. What I'm hoping and dreaming for. I wanted to feel more fulfilled. I wanted to work less. I wanted to help people more. I wanted to have more of those moments where I just give somebody like, hey, do this little thing and it'll make a big difference. And I also wanted less admin work, which I think as my business grows, I'm maybe not getting less admin work. And I'm thinking about maybe having a virtual assistant or something, because I'm getting to the point where I might need that. But for the last few years, I have had less admin work. Just a couple other spaces. I think really important to consider your hobbies and your interests as well as your educational background, because I think it helps, and your personality, because I just think all of these are pieces of you. Your work is not one piece of you. It's just one piece of you. It's not the only piece of you. And so incorporating all of these different components can really help you identify what you enjoy, what you feel good at, what lights you up. And so even like little things like I took a lot of acting classes, and I often joke, I took acting classes at the same place as Anne Hathaway. And I joke that her parents got a lot more bang for their buck. But I really I'm here because I really like presenting and I really like being in front of an audience. And all those acting classes I took, yeah, I'm not an actress, but they did something to develop some skill that I'm utilizing right now. And so I think even those little things are important. What did I used to enjoy? I used to enjoy writing a lot. So I do a lot of writing. I have different things that I do that are writing related. I also use this, and again, I go more into this in my ABA Business Inspiration course. I also use this as a space. So I'll talk in that course, I'll talk a lot about making the transition from being a full-time working for somebody else to full-time working for yourself, and how one goes up and the other one comes down. And I think that some of this is my strength. I work fast. I do reports really well. So I did FBAs for an adult services company for a couple years because I could do it at night. It was super easy to do. It was like reviewing records, sending a few emails, getting some information, and then updating the FBAs. Really easy source of additional income to start saving money so that I could be on my own and understand that my practice is going to take time to build. And so I use those strengths. That's not something I wanted to do long term, but I use those strengths of mine to get to my long-term goal. And I think that's like another piece is I didn't go straight from working full-time for someone else to working full-time for myself. It was a journey and it was a path. Here is my road. My business has grown exponentially. I'm still working and getting closer and closer to my ideal work-life balance. It is definitely a progression, but I really think I'm much happier than I was before. I feel much more fulfilled. I feel much more resilient. All those indicators on the burnout scale would be pretty low at this point for me, because I love what I do and I feel inspired by my work almost every single day. I already mentioned at the beginning of my road where additional income, I was doing FBAs. I worked for a couple of ABA companies doing assessments. So I would go do the VB map. I would write it up, they would submit it to the insurance, and then another BCBA would take on the case, which was really great for me because, like I said, now I'm divorced, but I had some weekends free. I would go take one Saturday, earn a nice amount of money, and kind of be done with it. So it felt really sustainable for me to just pick up a little extra cash. I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do, but like I said, the impartial hearing process really worked for me. It was really something that lit me up. So I started taking advocacy coursework, and I also started making a network where I am in New Jersey. And what I started to see as I was taking this advocacy coursework and networking in New Jersey is that there was this unmet need. There's this pocket of children who experience emotional dysregulation and executive functioning deficit. And they don't need 40 hours a week of ABA or 20 hours a week of ABA, but they need some type of behavioral therapy. And the therapies that are being offered to these kids who are usually diagnosed with ADHD or meet the ADHD criteria, they might have autism, they might also have anxiety, they might not have a diagnosis. They are not, those therapies that are usually being offered are, maybe they're getting occupational therapy, but now the occupational therapist is saying, oh, we can't help with the emotional regulation piece. We can only help so much with that. We've done all the sensory work and they're still having behavioral issues. Or they're working with a play therapist or a talk therapist. And these are families who are feeling like all these things are not quite working. And there's a population of kids whose needs are not being met. For me, my son falls into this population, but I did not know that at this time. And so I started to take on more and more of these clients who I was only seeing one time a week and doing these like low dosage ABA, started taking on consulting clients where I'm mentoring, supporting businesses, helping with business development very slowly, and starting to fade out those areas of that additional income that I was talking about so that I'm doing the things that I really want to be doing and taking on the clients that I want to be taking on more of. I also had to learn how to say no to clients that don't match my professional goals or interests. So I remember once a woman reached out to me and was like, hey, can you help my kid get desensitized to like medical procedures? And it's technically I can. I've done it in schools. I've done it as a behavior analyst, but I don't want to do that. That is not something I am interested in. I'm not going to do that, right? Like I got to say no to that. Even though when you're on your own, it is really hard to say no to a possible income and to something that you're like, I'm capable of it. And at a certain point, you might say yes. You might be like, you know what? I'm going to take that on because I have to, but you don't, but I'm not always going to say yes to this type of case. I'm just saying yes right now because I need a little extra money and I know I can do do right by this family, do right by this client, so I'll take it on. But eventually as my specific niche has grown, I can't be taking things that don't fit into it anymore because I'm not going to do them I'm going to do them a disservice, and I'm not going to enjoy it as much. And I'm not like, if I don't enjoy it as much, I'm not going to do it as well. And so to me, that's not ethical. And so I'm fading out of some of those traditional BCBA responsibilities that I was previously doing. And so now it's led me to here where I can take my kids to Puerto Rico for a whole week, no work, just enjoy being with them. I'm not recovering from burnout. I'm not checking my phone. I'm not responding to emails. I'm not wondering what's going to happen when I get back. I'm not wondering what I'm missing. I'm just with them for a week. Not completely off the grid because like I'm still addicted to my phone, but I'm not working at all. I'm just reading my own books. I'm just spending time with them. And I just feel like that was my goal, is that these are two humans who need me and who need me to be available, and I can't be working 50 to 60 hours a week for somebody else, doing all of these things that emotionally burn me out, leave me physically unavailable, and did not allow me to do the things that I wanted to prioritize. And now I'm in a space where I don't feel burnt out. I do feel my life is pretty balanced. Like my now 6-year-old, this was last year, my now 6-year-old was just home on Monday because he had an ear infection. And it's like, all right. So I took a sick day and I rearranged my schedule. And there was a couple moments where he had to play on his own, but there was also a couple moments where I got to spend time with him, where I was like, look, I get this instead of it being like, oh, he's homesick. I'm like, oh, I get this bonus time with you. How cool is that? Let me take care of you. Let me snuggle you. Let me spend time with you. I work less, sometimes some weeks, but I would say my average is not 50. I don't work an average of 50 to 60 hours a week. I work much less than that. And I just love it. And I love when I am working. I love what I do. And I've picked spaces where I can carve out that time to be with my kids and do the things that mean the most to me and prioritize for me. So let me tell you a little bit about what that is. What does my job actually look like? I think I felt like a little vague until this point. So my practice, I provide behavior. I mentioned some of these pieces. I provide behavioral therapy, and it's primarily, apologies, I'm just trying to move the bar again. It is primarily to clients who have ADHD, who have anxiety, with autism, or maybe not yet diagnosed. A lot of times I am either a stop on the road for somebody where they've been in this huge long space where they've tried OT, they've tried speech, they've tried talk therapy, and they're like, nothing is helping. Now we're going to try behavioral therapy as like our last ditch effort here before meds or before an out of district placement or before the like what feels really extreme. And then most of that is low dosage ABA. Like I said, I'm working with these kids maybe one time per week. It allows for diversified income, right? Because I'm not relying on one client. I'm not relying on 3 families. I have about 10 different kids that I see about once a week. Some of them I see every other week as well. I work Monday, Tuesday. I work 4 days a week. I save a day per week where I don't see clients and I use it for development or for personal things. So I'm able to get my hair cut. I'm able to have lunch with my mom instead of spending the day in the ER with my mom. It also gives me that buffer. So God forbid we do have an issue on Monday. I still have that extra day in my week that gives me that space. I have chosen to see clients every other weekend right now. It's not something I consistently do. I do it for a little bit of time and then I fade those clients back into my week. It's just been really hard to say no because there's been a lot of kids who are really struggling right now. So right now I'm picking up extra kids and I feel like I know I can say no and I just choose not to. Oops. I'm not ready for this. Nope, too far. Okay. My job really focuses on empowerment for clients, for parents, for the community, a lot of emotional regulation, a lot of executive functioning. It is all still ABA based, but I'm not necessarily sitting there taking discrete trials. I have my own session notes, I make my own goals, I have my own informal assessment that I do, and I'm working with kids. Emotional regulation, for instance, doesn't start with telling kids to take deep breaths when they're upset. It starts with understanding what emotions are, and then understanding their emotions, and then understanding how their body feels with their emotions. So all of those are skills that as behavior analysts, we can break down and we can teach. I don't sit there with emotion. This is actually a perfect example. This is my son. This is how he's feeling today. He feels sick. I'm sharing his emotions with him. So I took the picture, but I don't just sit there with flashcards being like, how does he feel? Show me sad, show me sick. I might say, draw how you're feeling. I might have different pictures. We might read a book about emotions. It's all, but the target is just identifying the emotions. And then the next step might be like, where do you feel it in your body when you're feeling this way? And it's all very generalized. It's all but it's all broken down in a behavior analytic way. And so my practice is a great space if that's something that you're interested in doing. And I have lots of ways to support you if that is something you're interested in doing. But I'm going to switch again to stop sharing for a second because I also want to show an additional tool that I have. While I'm looking for what I'm seeing, I just see so happy about the low dose ABA. So many kids can benefit from this. Thank you. I love it. It's so great. And then Elizabeth asked, do you see these clients in person or remotely? So most I see in person. I do not have an office. My dream is to convert my garage into a therapy space. I have to save money for that. So I'm still working for that dream. But right now I go to other people's homes and I work or to like aftercare or school or daycare, wherever works. And I work with kids in their community spaces. And then I do have 2 or 3 clients that I see remotely. And then if I do parent support, if it's primarily parents, then I will do some of that remotely usually because it's just easier logistically for everyone. And then Alex said, do clients private pay or does insurance cover these services? So that is a great question. I am out of network. I do help parents get out of network benefits if they are eligible for it. As most of you, I'm sure, know, a lot of insurance companies will not cover 97155 clients or 97156 or whatever. They will not cover the ABA insurance codes if a child does not have an autism diagnosis. A lot of times, because I'm only providing 1 hour a week, 2 hours a week, something like that, I'm able to work with the insurance company to make an exception in a couple of different ways that I don't want to necessarily go into here, but I do go into in my business course. And I'm happy to talk to people with separately about that. But I am able to sometimes work with insurance companies to cover that as an out of network benefit, even though a child for medical necessity, basically. But they pay me and then I provide a super bill. I will work with their insurance companies. I do try to give people CPT codes and here's the language to use. And sometimes I just call their companies directly because I know as a mom, I get overwhelmed and we speak a totally different language. And so if I tell someone, call up and see if they will cover a BCBA, they'll call back and be like, yeah, they said it's fine. And really what the insurance company means is it's fine as long as you do these 72 steps. And the parent didn't get that information. So sometimes it's just easier for me to do it. The next question I see here is how long did it take you to get your first client? So I started doing this before I left my full-time job. I fortunately was in a really good position where I was able to, I lucked out a little bit. I took some leave from my full-time job and was able to work part-time for that company while I was also still building up my practice. And so I slowly decreased my hours and then increased my private practice. So I didn't go cold turkey. So I was starting to take clients pretty early, before I was full-time private practice. And I would say that this was something that I'd worked in clinically, I'd worked in public schools before, so I had experience with this population. And these are such great questions. They did not have my first couple clients just came to me where it's one of them, a psychiatrist I worked with was like, hey, could you see this kid for behavioral therapy virtually? And I was like, yeah, sure. I'll give it a try. That's fine. It was one of those things where I was like, oh, I'll do it. Sure. But I didn't know if I was going to like it. And then I started to really like it. And so I started to get more and more clients. And so then I've really specialized in this space. Whereas before it's, yes, I have experience. I feel confident in it. And now this is actually just my practice specialty. I'm going to get to the marketing questions in a minute. I want to just share with you all a little bit on how to decide where your best practice space is going to be. So I'm just going to share also, and again, we can email all of this to you after the webinar. So I just want to share this with you that this is your own self-assessment or skills assessment so that you can go through, it's like a selection-based responding so that you can go through different places that you really like, different settings, different practice specialties, different BCBA level skills. Perhaps you really like designing clinical protocols. So the first section is your clinical work. And so these are different settings, different practice specialties. Maybe you really enjoy academics. Maybe you really enjoy working with people on teaching vocational skills. Maybe it's a strength of yours, but it's not preferred. So maybe you're going to try to find something where you're helping adult services for a little while as a part-time job while you're building up. You really actually enjoy sleep issues and you want to learn more about sleep issues. And so this starts to give you that idea of I'm really good at this, but I really enjoy this. Maybe those are the same and maybe they're not yet. Supervisory level skills, other skills that are adjacent that we need for our field, what type of treatment modality you like to treat in. Like I said, I guess I do one-to-one individualized services. Short-term services might be like crisis management. And then the demographics of your client population. And this is a smaller section, but it just helps you know how to stay inside your scope or what you're interested in. So if you're like, I wouldn't take adult clients other than when I did those FBAs, I can't do adults long-term because it's not preferred for me. And I would say it's not a strength. It's something I can write FBAs well, but adults is not, it's not that enjoyable for me. Things like that. Some people might want to work with an incarcerated population. You might want to work with only parents and caregivers. Great. You might hate working with parents and you're like, I want to work in a space where I work with high schoolers and I get to just interact with them and not so much their families. And then different types of diagnoses. There's a lot of spaces outside of autism. We don't just have to work with autism. It's interesting that I don't have autism on here. Oh, I'm going to have to redo this at some point. 6.1 must be autism and 6.2 must be, where are they? Must be ADHD. Apologies. Don't know why that happened either. But yeah, so different diagnoses so that you can just get a sense of where are you looking, what space are you looking to be in? This is just now I'm about to wrap up. So our last keyword is going to be the word baseball. So BASEBALL. The World Series, the Baseball World Series is coming up. I am a Yankee fan. Go baseball. I'm like a hardcore Yankee fan. Hopefully I didn't just alienate a whole bunch of people. So that is our final keyword. What I'm just going to do to wrap up is I'm going to share my screen one more time and just share my course offerings and talk a little bit about those, and then I'll answer those questions about marketing. So if you are interested in learning more about what I do with ADHD, I offer an ADHD exchange, which is with ABA Made Easy, really going into the ADHD diagnosis and how to treat ADHD using ABA. So let me put that link in the chat. Right now, we are offering that as a membership. So it's $25 a month. And right now there are 6 courses that you can take for 6 CEUs that goes through the neurobiology of ADHD, how to teach emotional regulation, how to teach social skills, how to teach executive functioning, how to work with schools, and then best practices. We are going to continue to add more content over the coming months as well. So definitely check that out if you are interested in doing the similar thing that I am currently doing with kids with ADHD, or if you want to learn more about working with an ADHD population. My second offering that I do is my ABA Business Inspiration Masterclass. I also offer individual mentoring. So I'm putting my Stan store so you can learn more about those. The Business Masterclass will answer a lot of these questions great questions that you guys have had. Marketing strategies, how to handle private pay, how to get your clients. I go through like how to create your business plan and your mission, and then how do you develop from there to get all of your business items in place. Who do you absolutely need, whether you're going to have payroll, whether I don't hire other people. So I don't need payroll, whether you need HR, how to recruit a virtual assistant. I go through all of those pieces. And then talking about clinical pieces, talking about networking pieces. What do you absolutely need clinically? What type of practice management softwares should you be looking at? What data are you collecting? How does that look for your practice? And then networking, marketing. How are you getting clients? How are you creating this solid network? How are you getting your name out there in a way that feels, because oftentimes, like I know, we can feel like abrasive or aversive if we're like too out there, but also like you have to put yourself out there in order to get clients and like what to expect there. And again, I do all of this because I felt very alone in this journey that I do. And I also, like, when I looked around, I was like, not many other people do what I'm doing. I can't really find anyone. There was a lot of people telling me, oh, you can't do this in New Jersey. It's never going to work here. Everybody works for a company. You have to work for a company. There's no other options. I'm very much the type of person, which is probably where my son gets it from. I'm very much the type of person where I'm like, oh, you're telling me I can't do something? Let me prove you wrong. Let me show you that I can do it. And so now I've really done it. I work smarter, not harder. I enjoy what I do. I feel good about what I do. I feel like I help the families that I work with. And so I'm trying to give back to our ABA community and trying to help other people feel as good about what they do, whether it's similar to what I do, or one person I worked with, for instance, she wanted to open up a Montessori school that also did ABA. So it was a Montessori preschool and an Montessori ABA preschool. And you think like those two things shouldn't get along, but the vision she had for it really was amazing. And it was great. And she took my Business Inspiration Masterclass, and she started off by providing in-home preschool services so that she can save up money to get to her eventual goal. Because for her, she was like, how do I open a school? Like, how do I go from having no money, having no resources? You can get small business loans. You can do all of those things. And those are still options. But I don't want to just take this big chance. I want to build it, and I want to build it slowly. And so she started by providing in-home services in this Montessori ABA style, and she's working towards opening up her own school. And she'll get there. 100% she's going to get there. And I feel like this gave her those tools to be able to see that vision and see the route that she's taking to get there. You want to know what? I just want to put, in case people need to leave, I'm going to put the feedback form and the CEU form in the chat right now so that if you are heading out, you have access to those forms. I also, which I haven't even talked about, have a Supervision Reimagined is my second company where we provide supervision and mentorship to new BCBAs to support improved practices in BCBA fieldwork, which I don't have a link for, but can share in the ABA Business Challenges. And we are going to be doing a training next month with this Facebook group. So with the ABA Business Challenges Facebook group. So you can join us for that as well, where I'll talk more about that business and how to support RBTs more effectively. And then the last thing that I just want to plug really quickly is that I am on the board of ASAT, which is the Association for Science and Autism Treatment. And we have a webinar next week. So if you're also looking for more CEUs, your money goes straight to a nonprofit. And one of my mentors who also showed me like, oh, I really can enjoy this work is going to be presenting, David Celeberti, and he's wonderful. So highly recommend checking that out as well. I think that is all of my plugs for all of the different things. I'm going to leave my contact information here. And just to answer the marketing questions really quickly, my best marketing strategy, honestly, is word of mouth, because I work obviously doing things like this, expanding my reach in different ways. I'm full right now for my private pay clients. I do a lot of networking. So like I'm having lunch with somebody this afternoon who wanted to learn more about ABA and wants to like be able to learn more about what I do so she can refer me to other people. So it's a lot of networking. I get a lot of referrals from other professionals in my area who said, you know, they were seeing a social worker or an OT, and then those are people that I've been working with. So then they refer me to them. I also do a lot on Facebook in moms groups and supporting different families in that way. But I worked with a insurance specialist who doesn't have a website. She has an AOL email address and she has nothing. There's no way to find her. I think if you search her name, you just find like her age, her address, her phone number, the basic. And everybody knows her in the tri-state area. You mention her name and people will be like, oh yeah, I've worked with her. Oh yeah, everybody knows her. Everybody knows her. And that was like my goals. Obviously I have an Instagram account. I have a website. You want to have in this day and age, those are good things to have. They're not, and they help move things faster. And then it's a lot of offering initial free discovery calls. I've had 3 this week, and I think only one of them is going to sign on as a new client. That happens a lot as well. So a lot of those discovery calls might be just giving out free information initially. So those are just some of the ways. And again, my course has a whole 2 hours just on marketing and networking. So I'm going to go a lot more into depth in that. But I think we're just about out of time. So Derek is raising his hand.
All right. So yeah, and I totally agree with your marketing strategy and getting your reputation out, and great presentation, by the way. I love these, especially when it comes to burnout, because although I don't run an ABA business, we're involved in a lot of ABA businesses, but as a business owner of almost 20 years now, we get burnout. And it's important to think about this stuff. But yeah, on the marketing stuff, I definitely appreciate the advice on the doing things for people for free, jumping on those calls, giving the advice, helping them through stuff. And most of our marketing now just involves that, right? People call us up and say, hey, we need help with something. And if it's something simple that I can do, most of the time, that's what we do. And we end up not charging anybody. So it's fine. We'll take care of it, move on to the next thing. But as you're dealing with your clients, not same way, they understand, they get to see how you work. They get to decide whether or not you know what you're talking about. And then often they will call you back and say, hey, can you help us out with this other thing that we're going to hire you for? So hugely important. And I think it's even more important than the social media or any of that stuff. It's really good there. All right. So my question. So for all the ABA owners that are on here, or the BCBAs that are in these management positions right now, burnout, stressed out, what are a couple examples of just immediate release valves that they can pull, like the ripcord? You're like today, you're exhausted right now watching the CEU. What's a release valve where they can relieve some pressure immediately, where you've seen people to be able to put up boundaries or eliminate some process that they don't necessarily need, they think they need? Like, where's a keystone they can remove there?
Yeah, I'm excited. I see people typing in the chat, drop down to hourly. I'm like trying to think of, for me, what I think that there is. I always think for me, it's like trying to find the joy. So it's not even just necessarily like a lot of the self-care industry is dedicated to almost like numbing yourself. And for me, I find, what can I do that I'm going to enjoy today? What can I do that's going to make me feel good today? Not just what can I do that is going to help me escape all the bad. And sometimes that's my kids, and my kids and I do the high low buffalo every night. So we're always like rehashing our joy as well, which is what's your high, what's your low, and what's the random thing of the day. And honestly, in 2020, I did this thing where I wrote down my highlight of the day every single day. And I think that was for me. I didn't change anything about my job at that point, but that for me was like, wasn't at that yet at that point. But I actually think that probably was like what got me starting, realizing what was my joy. Where I'm like, oh, look at how much like I enjoy my kids and my friends and this. And I'm not really putting work. Like I'm really not enjoying my work. And then as I started to move into this independent space, I started being like, exciting phone call, even if it didn't land me the client. I'd be like, I enjoyed that phone call and I want to do that again. And so the reinforcers were there for me to do that stuff. And it starts bit by bit. That's how I
So
feel.
I'm hearing incremental changes and practicing gratitude.
Yes. Yes. Good reframe. I love it. And Ryan
So
said getting up
Ryan's,
and running.
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Derek.
Oh, just going to tell you
Yeah.
Ryan's question here. Yeah, getting up and running, and his biggest stressor is finding clients.
Yes, it is. It does feel stressful. I remember when I first started, I would say, so I went fully solo 2020, July 2021. And I remember my company was like, actually, could you stay through the end of August? And I stopped working there at the end of June. So July was my first month on my own. And I was really tempted to do it because obviously it's easier, it's comfortable. And I was like, I just got to say no. You got to say no at some point. And I got a client in July that was an EI kid, but EI hadn't kicked in. They couldn't find anyone for him. And so I was working with this kid like 10 hours a week. And then all of a sudden, EI kicked in and I had nothing. And I was like, oh God, what's going to happen? And somebody said to me, it's going to be a lot of hopping from client to start, which is really why I personally recommend, if you're not doing like a small business loan or you don't have the resources to be able to not have a sustainable income for a while, you really want to have a savings, whether it's 3 months or 6 months of whatever. That's why I basically worked 2 jobs for over a year to be able to save up money, knowing like I anticipate the first 3 to 6 months to not be making my target income. And I talk a lot about that in my course, is like, how soon do you want to make your target income? And if you want to make your target income in 6 months, what are you doing to get yourself there? And how are you getting there? And are you saying yes to things you don't necessarily want to do so that you are making that income? Or are you taking the time? Are you like, it's okay if it takes longer, but I have to save up more money beforehand? I think that's like the big piece, is like you have to put all of those pieces together. To me, I had to put all of those pieces together before I could take that leap.
And I think a lot of people don't give themselves enough credit for the way they can live. Think about when you were in high school and you first went to college. If you moved to college, you're on your own, you're not making any money, you're broke no matter what. You're working jobs, you're going to school, you're doing all this stuff, and at the end of the day you're going to eat ramen noodles. But after 4 years of grinding that out, you have a bachelor's degree, and then most of you probably stayed for another few years and got your master's degree, and things progress. You have to earn those things. They sometimes take sacrifice. So one of the stressors that I see business owners putting on themselves are maintaining a high level of standard of living, right? And saying, all right, I'm making X amount of dollars as a BCBA. I've got this income that I'm used to, this lifestyle that I'm used to. I have this savings, and I'm going to keep the BMW. Or I'm not saying everybody's driving around in BMWs. Some of you have nice cars, but we can get a used car instead of a new one. We can make some adjustments in our life, because I can assure you, if you set yourself up and you do it with as little debt as possible, and you do it without going into more debt, especially, or burning up savings, when that money
Yeah.
starts to come in from your business, you're going to get a nice car again, right? Like sometimes there is a little bit of sacrifice that's needed there. But if you can knock a $500 a month car payment off, that's another $6,000 a year that you don't have to take out of your savings or go into debt for or whatever, right? And there's a lot of those little things that we can adjust. But sometimes it's hard for business owners to make changes and take it out of their personal life and downgrade things for a while and then bring those things back later when income is up. So something to keep in mind.
Yeah. Yeah, no, those are all really great points. And I think also like it's the doing it with as little debt as possible. I think for me, always feel safer. Because so I basically, my viewpoint was like, I can always fall back on my BCBA. I can always pick up hourly clients with companies if I need to until things start to get moving, is how I felt. I also think clients and people can tell when you, this sounds like really bad, but I feel like there's a different energy when you are almost like desperate for that first client versus like now I like when I respond, you send me an email and I respond immediately, people are like, oh, is she so available that she's responding immediately? I don't know if I want that therapist. That like, why isn't anyone else with that therapist? There's some energy I feel that I give off differently now at this point where it's like you feel like it's so needed. And I think going through this process through my ABA business course helps take that energy out where you don't feel as like frenetic about it.
Yeah, I think that's where your plan, having a good plan comes in and making sure that you're focused on executing your plan daily, like having your routine, not worrying too much about your long-term goals. It's good to have a goal, but it's also important that you have your daily routine. And if you have your daily routine, you're going to be running through your daily playbook of these are the things I need to get done today. This is what I'm going to do every day to help move my business forward and keep things running and help things grow. And as long as you're doing that, eventually the clients are going to come. And that gives you a little bit more confidence when you jump on the phone with somebody or you're jumping into reply to an email or something like that, because people do smell desperation through text messages and emails and phone calls and stuff like that. You don't want to be in that position where you're so excited to have that first client, like you said. That's super important.
I've really enjoyed this and I could talk about this for hours.
All right, awesome. Thanks.
Thank you all for joining us.
Nicole.
You're already doing the work, investing your time, your energy, and your vision. So let's make it count. Build something that works without breaking you. The EBCBA Blueprint is the way. Get started for free with our foundation course.